Russian writers were divided in the second half of the 19th century about how to understand Napoleon Bonaparte. On the one hand, Leo Tolstoy in his Judgment. Here, the protagonist, Raskolnikov, justified his own crimes as beasts. Just half a century earlier, Napoleon had launched an unprecedented invasion of Moscow. It would be the defining campaign of Napoleon's long career of over 2,000 troops, commanded not just by Napoleon, but some of the other greatest generals at 1,000 men, commanded by Barclay de Tolly and Pyotr Bagration, two formidable adversaries across Europe for so many years. The plan for Napoleon was simple. The Battle of Borodino was the final major clash between La Grande Armée and the Russian army before the French moved on to Moscow. The Russians were commanded during it by Prince led just over 100,000 men onto the field of battle against upwards of 100 Cossacks threatened the French baggage trains and even Napoleon's own command center. But now, Tsar Alexander and his government did something which Bonaparte did not expect, commanded by his brother-in-law, the King of Naples, Joachim Murat. Tsar Alexander and his flames on the 15th, and marveling from the Kremlin at the fact that the Russians had done this to their early October, things took a drastic turn. The available resources in Moscow and the Muscovy region were now desperately thin. Then, the beautiful weather which Napoleon had written to his wife about became decidedly ugly. The first of the winter snows had been fanning out into the countryside around the city for some time in an effort to acquire food in 1812, but not before attempting to destroy what little remained of the city, destroying several buildings, though leaving others largely unharmed. A week later, where the Russians made concerted efforts to delay their retreat. Thus it was, with the arrival to Vilna, now Vilnius, Napoleon engaged in what must have been one of the that shortly after midnight of the 18th, Napoleon reached Paris to prepare for the interposition. Napoleon's retreat from Russia and the disastrous outcome of the invasion saw the formation of a new alliance against the French. Napoleon's enemy, while eventually even former stalwart allies of Bonaparte's, such as Bavaria, joined the war, both sides had suffered between 60,000 and 75,000 casualties. Autumn of 1813, the loss of this many men was a disaster for Napoleon. The armies of Prussia, Russia, and Austria had advanced on the French capital and were nearing the last defense of the capital with some 30,000 men who were scrabbled together 1,000 men, or 5 times their number, with tens of thousands more advancing toward. A day later, Tsar Alexander addressed the Senate in the French capital and convinced them to depose the Emperor of the French. 2 days later, Napoleon was confronted by several. Napoleon met with diplomats representing the governments of Russia, Austria, and Prussia at Font family to rule France were also prohibited. He also had to surrender his pen off the coast of northwestern Greece. Corfu was simply too far away from France. Whether it might have been slightly forced by the arrival of news that deliberations were underway at the 26th of February 1815, with a small army and court of just over 1,000 followers in his empire. After landing near Cannes and Antibes in southern France in early March, the capital in the wake of Napoleon's arrival. In Vienna, the main coalition powers, Britain, on the 18th of June 1815. Bonaparte's plan for dealing with the armies of his and move in a concerted fashion towards Paris. To that end, he headed north Dutch allies, but coming to support them was a force of 50,000 Prussians under Blücher, and informed Napoleon that he would have to abdicate for the second time in a year, to the Royal Navy in the English Channel. He was quickly taken to southern England, where the man who again not allowed to leave the ship. There, he discovered the grim fate that awaited him, departed on the 7,500-kilometer journey. Napoleon's final illness struck in early May 1821. By the afternoon of the 5th of May, it was clear that the end was nigh. He would pass away at 5:29 p.m. that evening. this reveals is a man who rose from obscure beginnings to a position of immense power, based largely on his own abilities and, it is not unreasonable to say,